नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली व नुसल्लिमु अला सय्यदिना व मौलाना मुहम्मदिन रसूलिहिन नबिय्यिल अमीनिल मकीनिल हनीनिल करीमिर रऊफिर रहीम। अम्मा बाद, बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। Dear brothers and sisters and respectable audience and participants of this workshop today, I start with praising Almighty Allah on blessing us with tawfiq of this session, in which we are going to discuss a very significant subject of Islamic sciences, and that is significance of traditional Islam in the modern world. Without going into preliminary details, I would like to concentrate and emphasize on very specific aspects of the topic so that the whole concept be understood clearly and unambiguously. And I will try, by the grace and tawfiq of Almighty Allah, to remove, possibly to remove, the misunderstandings and ambiguities which do exist in connection of this topic in the minds of the majority of the Muslim Ummah, and particularly the younger generations, those who are being brought up in the Western world, or those who are living and breathing in the Western atmosphere. The first basic point to concentrate on is to understand what the traditional Islam is. What do we mean by traditional Islam? I would mention in the beginning certain terms in which we are confused, and we are supposed to differentiate between those. The first is, of course, our topic, traditional Islam. So what is traditionalism? Second is fundamentalist Islam. Third is extremist Islam. I am just adding the word Islam to all these terms, whether right or wrong. But I am mentioning these terms in connection of Islam as far as the perception is concerned. Perceptions are always not right and correct. Many perceptions are based on misunderstandings, incorrect appreciation of the concepts, and many ambiguities, intellectual, classical, scientific, juridical, religious, theological, philosophical. They can be of any nature. But many perceptions are based on an experimental, environmental. They are based on wrong or incorrect appreciations of the things. So this is how it happens. Traditional Islam, fundamentalist and extremist Islam. On the other side, there is liberal Islam. secularist Islam and modernist Islam. So we are, in the beginning of our discourse, differentiating between these 6 terms: traditionalism, fundamentalism, extremism, then liberalism, secularism, and modernism. The basic concept which we are discussing here, the relevance and significance of traditional Islam in the modern world. So we are trying to understand the importance of and relevance of traditional Islam with perspective of modernity. I would again differentiate between the modernity, and modernism. Every modern is not modernism. Every modernity is not modernism. There are clear limits and borders of differentiation. This problem had never emerged in Islamic history. The problem of modernity or any counter action of modernity with traditional Islam, or traditional Islam has never countered the modernity in any specific age or in any specific time, any specific period. Apparently, as it is assessed that modernism or modernity, it is a Western phenomena which started after French Revolution, Russian Revolution. These were different, and scientific revolution, industrial revolution. These different kind of revolutions, they created some awareness and modernistic movements with some new ideas. In the last 200 to 300 years, this period was the period of clash between the traditional religion, clash between the religion and modernistic attitudes of the world, which had emerged through these kind of revolutions and changes, social, political, economic, scientific changes, which had given a creation and emergence to certain new ideas. So hence an intellectual war started, rather a physical war started between the religious authority in the Western world, religious authority and secularity. At that time, the religious authority used to vest in Catholic Church. So in fact, this was a clash between Catholicism or Catholic authority and secularity. And finally, after a long war consisting of about 200 years, secularity, as Rousseau said, became the civil religion, who was the founder of the Russian Revolution in thought. So it became a civil religion, secularity. And the Catholic authority was curtailed within the church. And the concept of the categorical division between church and state, through this secular approach, this became the modern aptitude of the world, Western world. Keeping in view this kind of Western historical background of modernism, now I would like to explain the Islamic fact, historical fact. This kind of situation never ever existed in Islamic history. I will explain the reasons when I will come to the topic of traditional Islam, what traditional Islam is, and why is it relevant and important and significant, rather I would say indispensable for the benefit of Muslim Ummah in the modern world. Why? I will explain at that time. So the basic thing which we have to understand is that there was never a challenge in whole of the Islamic history. There was never societal challenge at any time against the sacramental or sacred values of Islam, or against the juridical, religious or spiritual authority of Islam. The reason is that the Islam, right from its beginning till today, does not possess the character and nature of Catholicism. There was no authority like the Catholic authority in Western Christian world in Islamic history. That's why nobody, no society in the whole Islamic history ever felt any need and necessity to challenge that authority. Islam existed in a continuity, and that was traditional continuity in two dimensions. One continuity was vertical continuity of the original message, vertical continuity of transformation of the original message of Islam from generations to generations, from Salaf to Khalaf, from the companions and the early generations of Islam to their successors and successive generations of Islam. There was a vertical traditional continuity of spreading, or you can say of communication and transformation of the real spirit of Islam. And then there was a horizontal continuity too. Horizontal continuity of expansion of interpretation of Islam. Vertical continuity was in connection of transformation, and horizontal continuity was in connection of its expansion. Since there was not a single authority who was exercising an absolute, unchallengeable, unqualified authority in the Muslim Ummah as it existed in other cases, the absolute, unchallengeable, unqualified, permanent, persistent, everlasting authority only vested in Quran and Sunnah of Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the command of Almighty Allah and command of Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, either in form of his speech or his practices or his tacit approvals, whether they were verbally transmitted to generations or they were existing in the form of written records. These two sources, and in fact these are not two, this is in fact one source, and that one source is the divine revelation. If divine revelation comes to us in a manifest form, in its externality, in letter and spirit both, it is known as Quran. If divine revelation comes to us in the form of its interpretation, in the form of meaning, in the form of contents, in the form of substance, in the form of message, but not in the form of words, then it is known as Sunnah or Hadith. And Quran declares the fact, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Every single word uttered by Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is wahy, is divine revelation communicated to him by Almighty God. He is the formulator of the words and not the substance. So this absolute authority in Islamic history only vested in divine revelation, either in the form of Quran or in the form of Sunnah. And other remaining there were sources. And all these secondary and subsidiary sources of Islam, Islamic knowledge, Islamic law, Islamic philosophy, Islamic culture, Islamic civilization, Islamic sciences, Islamic classical disciplines, whatever, Islamic morality, anything you may take into consideration, all other sources were whether secondary or subsidiary, and they were serving this original absolute authority of Quran and Sunnah. So no other authority was there to claim its absoluteness, to claim its unchangeability, unchallengeability. No other authority in the whole of the Islamic history of knowledge. So everybody was serving this authority. I will come when I explain whether it was ijma and ijtihad and qiyas and other sources. How this whole structure of traditional Islam was formulated. Either if they are Aimma of fiqh, they were serving Islam and Quran and Sunnah. Either they are Aimma of Sufism, they were serving Quran and Sunnah. If they were Aimma of tafsir and hadith and fiqh and philosophy and whatever Islamic classical science you may take into consideration, everybody was serving, interpreting, explaining the message of Quran and Sunnah, the same authority. So everybody was serving that authority. And nobody was the claimant of absoluteness of his own authority. So nobody had ever thought of challenging anyone. So that's why there was no conflict anywhere. Since there was no conflict of the modern requirements and any absolute authority as it existed in other case, so there was no clash, no conflict. And this continuity was always accommodating. It was accommodating vertically, it was accommodating horizontally. It was always accommodative. The custom, the usages, the necessities, the requirements of the modern times. So modernity was always accommodated in traditionality. In every period of time. Modernity was always a part of traditionality. Every modern requirement was being properly addressed to and accommodated in the traditional Islam. This is what traditional Islam meant. So there was no clash. And at that time, the records of the Muslims, literature and knowledge explain that this development of traditional Islam was always constructive, accommodative, inclusive and constructive. And a very beautiful thing which we have to keep in our mind is that when we say the authority of Holy Prophet was an absolute authority and is an absolute authority like Quran, if you just go a series of my lecture, about 100 lectures, 100 hours series, Hujjiyatus Sunnah, the authority of Sunnah. This series of my lecture consists of 100 hours, 100 episodes. And my other books, many books, Al-Hukm al-Shari and many other books. If you go through these books, you will find out hundreds of approximately 250 verses of Holy Quran describing the absolute, unchallengeable and permanent authority of Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Islam. Representatively and manifestatively. Holy Prophet exercises Almighty Allah's legislative authority for the Muslim Ummah because he is the spokesperson of Allah. Whatever he says, it is taken as it was said by Almighty Allah. Whatever he communicates, it is taken as if it was being communicated by Almighty Allah. Whatever he demonstrates, it is taken whatever it is wished by Almighty Allah. Whatever he tacitly approves, it means this is what Almighty Allah wants us to do or wants us to abstain from. So his whole conduct, his whole behavior, his whole model of his life is in fact the demonstration and practical manifestation of the divine will of Almighty Allah. That's why he is ma'asum. He is free of error. Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every prophet is free of error. He is ma'asum. And ummah is not ma'asum. Rather, none of the Muslim Ummah, not a single person is ma'asum. Ummah can commit an error. So now a very beautiful link between the unerroneous authority of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and unerroneous continuity of his message to the Ummah through traditional Islam. There should be some bridging link. Ummah can commit an error, Holy Prophet cannot. But there should be some bridging link, which Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has positively elaborated. He said, I am just quoting a few of these. If you want, you can. This is one of the books, my own books, compiled on Hadith, Al-Minhaj As-Sawi. In Tirmidhi, Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he relates, Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال إن الله لا يجمع أمتي على الضلالة وفي رواية قال لا تجتمع أمتي على الضلالة يد الله على الجماعة من شذ شذ إلى النار. This is Hadith Sahih. Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this is a guaranteed fact that Almighty Allah will never ever allow the community of my ummah, the collectivity of my ummah, to get together on an error. There would be no ijma of my ummah, consensus of my ummah on an error or any wrong. Because the hands of Allah's divine protection will always remain on collectivity of my ummah. And Holy Prophet said, Man shazza shazza ila nar. Anybody who isolates himself from the collective decision of the ummah, and that is the overwhelming majority of ummah. Because 100% unanimity is never possible in human history. When you talk al-jama'ah, when you talk of collectivity, when you talk of consensus, it means majority. Always there is differing minority, always it exists, and there is a room for that. So overwhelming majority will never do any consensus on any wrong or on any error. So this is where the collectivity of the ummah was protected from being united on any error. So this collectivity became the link and bridging link between the unerroneous status of Holy Prophet and the ummah of Holy Prophets, and the traditionality of Islam always remaining on the correct track and correct path. So if you find the sects, they may give a different wrong fatwas, a wrong attitudes, a wrong views on Islam. But you have to find always al-jama'ah. Majority of the ummah will always remain on right, would be correct. I have quoted just one hadith, but I have given quite a dozen hadiths in this chapter from all big books of Ibn Majah, Imam Musnad Ahmad, Abu Ya'la, Imam Ahmad Tabarani, Al-Hakim, by Anas ibn Malik, Abdullah ibn Umar, by again Abdullah ibn Umar, by Abu Zar al-Ghifari, but all come Haris al-Ash'ari. I have quoted about 1 dozen hadiths, Sahih and Hasan, on this particular subject. Just to save time, I quoted only one. This is how the thing which was transformed by Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his ummah, that was granted accuracy in the form of ijma, collectivity. But not the isolated views, not the minority views. Here is an indication of the roots of democracy in Islam. When I say roots of democracy in Islam, I don't mean all the systems of Western and Pakistani, including Western, Eastern, practical or political democracies which they are existing and which are existing in practice. I don't mean that. I mean al-jumhur. The majority decision would be right. So there would be no agreement of my ummah, consensus of ummah, and this correctness would be continued in the form of the consensus of the scholars of ummah. They would be the torch bearers, and through them traditional Islam will pass on from time to time, from generation to generation. They will form the intellectual body of ummah. intellectual body of Ummah. The ijma of scholars, ijma of jurists, a'immatul huda, a'immatul ilm, a'immatul mujtahideen. And again, when this traditional Islam had never faced any kind of contradiction or clash in any time of Islamic history, the reason was that four things were being always taken into consideration, four things were being managed, four things were always kept intact in traditional Islam. One, scriptural disciplines from scriptures. Scriptural disciplines, manqulat, whatever was transmitted in the form of text. This was the textual knowledge. Second, rational disciplines, ma'qulat, whatever was intellectually, rationally interpreted. So this was intellectual, rational and intellectual interpretations. Two things. And number three, development of intellectual capacities throughout our history. This was a significant, indispensable part of traditional Islam, that everywhere there was a significant process of development of intellectual and rational capacities which have ceased in the madrasas of present day. Intellectual development of intellectual capacity. That's why there was the people of tradition and the people of opinion. And the traditional Islam is a mixture of both. That's why there was Quran and Sunnah, two scriptures, the texts. Then there was ijma, the consensus, and qiyas, the analogy. So analogy, individual analogy was known as qiyas. And when it achieved the status of collective agreement of the body of scholars, it was known as consensus, ijma. So it was actually based on analytical, critical appreciation of the situation. How the law given in the text of Quran, how the legal value mentioned in the text of Sunnah, how that particular legal value would be applied on a newly emerging situation. How that order can be extended and applied in a new situation. On the modern, when it is being applied on a new situation, it means modernity is being addressed to. Modernity is being accommodated because the already existing law of the ancient time, from the textual knowledge, from scriptural knowledge, is being extended, is being expanded, is being applied through interpretations on newly emerging situations of modern times. Whether that situation was belonging to any factor of the modernity, there are factors of modernity. Society is one factor of modernity. Economics is a factor of modernity. Politics is a factor of modernity. Science is a factor of modernity. Philosophy is a factor of modernity. These are major 5 factors. Either modernity emerges through societal orders and societal needs and requirements, social emergences, either through political necessities, or through economic bondages and situations, or through philosophical thoughts, or through scientific developments, or through globality. I would add the 6th one, globality. International community has become a one nation. So a quick communication of knowledge and thoughts and ideas from east to west, which were never available at that time. So all these things, starting from the society ending up to the globality, all 6 things were always accommodated in traditional Islam, because these were accommodated in Quran, these were accommodated by Holy Prophet Sunnah, these were accommodated by the practice of the guided caliphs and their followers and their successors, and the 4 A'immah of fiqh, Imam Abu Hanifa, and Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and even the Jafri school of law. All these include, they are the part of the traditional Islam. Whether they were the Sufistic Islam, the Sufism, the spirituality, they were addressing situation to situation, the problems, materialistic problems faced by the lower self in Medina. A simple village society of Medina were different as compared to the moral, ethical and spiritual problems being faced by a man who was living in Kufa, an international you can say city of civilization. The people living in Egypt had different problems, living in Basra had a different problem. The people living in other parts of Khurasan had different problems. So the Sufiya were also addressing every emerging spiritual situation from time to time, from society to society, from place to place. In the same way, the juristic scholars, Aimma of Fiqh, Imam Malik was addressing the simple issues of a small, simple town of Medina. That's why his more emphasis was on scriptural disciplines, because he was not facing the intellectual challenges of the modern times. He never left Medina. Comparatively, Imam Shafi'i, who studied in Makkah and Medina, who lived in Baghdad and finally settled in Egypt, he had to face a lot of more intellectual issues. So his thought became more broader, more accommodating. He included the juristic opinion comparatively more than Imam Malik did it. When the case came to Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, since he was living in Kufa and Baghdad and Basra, which became the capital of Islamic Ummah, and being the capital, all ambassadors were coming there. There was an international interaction of civilizations and cultures, laws, political situations. People were going, people were coming. International trade center. So here the whole world was, you can say, whole world was available, or you can say whole world was existing in a single place. So when the matter came to Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, he expanded more interpretation towards juristic opinions than istihsan. And the same case of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, closer to Imam Malik. So when you put all of them together, not only Imam Abu Hanifa is the founder of traditional Islam, nor Imam Malik only, nor Imam Shafi Ahmad bin Hanbal. No, everybody is a part and parcel of traditional Islam. And the founder of traditional Islam is Prophet Muhammad himself. Because he was sent for the whole mankind. Ya Yuhannas inni Rasulullah ilaykum jamiya. I have been sent as a prophet and messenger to the whole of mankind. When you are a messenger of the whole of mankind, you are not the messenger only for Meccans or Medinans or the Arabs or a specific tribe. You are a messenger for the whole mankind. It means your message includes globality, all societies, and for all times. You are وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Up till the time, till time will exist. All the time and space, up till the existence of the time and space, his prophethood and messengership will continue. And it will never be repealed by any other prophet or any other book. So it means if he is the prophet of the last time before the day of resurrection, it means he is the most ancient prophet and he is the most modern prophet. His message has to be the most ancient, the most practical, the most constructive, the most developmental, the most continuing, and the most progressive and the most modern. He has to accommodate everything, because this is the requirement of his prophethood. Globality and permanence of his prophethood and messengership. So they were maintaining the development of intellectual capacity so that they may address the medical issues, the geographical issues, the astronomical issues, the biological issues, the cultural issues, the psychological issues, ecological issues. Every kind of issue, whatever had becoming necessity of the time, they were there to address each and everything. That's why I say that there is no clash between, when we say significance of traditional Islam in the modern world, it means this is one and the same thing. Modern world has not appeared now. Go back 300 years before. When every century was changing, the newly coming century was the modern world for the old century. Second century was a modern world for the first century, people of the first century. Third century was a modern world for the people of second century. 11th century was a modern world of modernity for the people of 10th century. And so on and so forth. 21st century is a modern world for the people of 20th century. If Islam and tradition, and what traditional Islam is? Tradition means that Islamic knowledge has a tradition of addressing every need of modernity in every century. If Islam has been addressing every need of modernity for the last 1500 years, why Islam cannot address in the new coming century too? So continuity and accommodation of modernity in every time is in fact the traditional Islam. We wrongly consider, as if when we talk of traditional Islam, a wrong perception comes to our mind. We think as if just the madrasas, just the mullahs, the Maulvis, just we think of extreme religiosity. Extreme religiosity. We think of specific forms of turbans and jubbas and specific kind of people. Specific, very narrow discipline. Nothing of all these things are to be known as traditional Islam. Traditional Islam is a universe of knowledge. It includes Quran and Sunnah, and it goes up to the science. Embryology. Can't you imagine the modernity of the message of Quran, which begins from the first verse in the cave of Hira. Iqra bismi rabbikal ladhi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq. The first divine message conveyed and communicated to Holy Prophet was a scientific message. It was not the message of worship, the message of salah, message of zakah, message of psalm, message of performance of hajj. No. Message of observance of worship. No. Message of halal and haram. No. The first message was the message of science. So if the first message of Quran is the message of science, Alladhi khalaqal insana min alaq, this word has most wrongly translated by the translators of Quran. Most of the translation possess this error, which alhamdulillah I have tried by the grace of Almighty Allah to correct it in my Quranic translation, Urdu and English both. They are published. It means Alladhi khalaqal insana min alaq. The first divine message, Holy Prophet ﷺ, he never went to any university. Just consider the aspect of modernity in prophetic message. There were no university, no college, no medical science, no institution, no biology, no cosmology, no embryology, nothing. And the available knowledge at that time was Aristotelian science. The first very verse rejected Aristotelian thought of science. Through which source? This is the absolute accurate modernity of Islam. Said khalaqal insana min alaq, that the human being has been created from alaq. And alaq means hanging mass to the endometrium of uterus. This is alaq. Wrong translations consist, if you go to the Holy Quran translation, which various scholars have done, unfortunately, they will transform the clot of blood. That's totally wrong. There is no level of any clot of blood in the whole process. From plantation of egg, division of cell, mitotic division and meiotic division, then the division of cell into two, then anaphase and telophase and prophase, all these four stages, then converting into the embryo, embryonic seven developments up to the fetus, and then the birth. Throughout the stage, starting right from the sperm and the ovum, or just writing from the zygote, which the first cell starts. At any stage, there is no space or no place of blood clot. So the question is, at that time, the human physical creation was known to be from the blood. This was Aristotelian science. Look at the accuracy of the modern thought of Prophet Muhammad in the Quran. Coming down from the Ghar of Hira, available existing scientific knowledge given by Aristotle is that the man created from the blood, menstrual blood of the women. Holy Prophet rejected this scientific theory, saying min alaq, no. Alaq, alaqa, muallaq, the hanging thing. From there is ta'alluq and ilaqa. Said he is created, the man is created from a mass which hangs, hanging mass to the endometrium of uterus. That is alaq. It is like leech. And then Surah Al-Mu'minun, where the 7 embryonic developmental stages are mentioned. Nutfa, then alaqa, then mudgha, then all these stages up till the embryo, fetus. So the first message was the accurate scientific message, rejecting the wrong scientific theories prevalent at that time. That's why the scholars of every age, they were trying hard on developing the intellectual capacities of their period. And the third, appropriate negotiation between the ancient approaches and forces of modernity. That's why they try to understand the present new modern situations, because they had to apply it, the already existing law, to the newly emerging situations. So it was necessary for them, positively necessary for them, to understand the newly situations, any kind of newly. So all subjects, sciences, knowledges were being appreciated. That's why in Harun-ul-Rashid and Mamun-ul-Rashid time, in Caliphate of Abbasids, the Darut Tarjama, the international translation house was established. Every knowledge of every science, every single book, right from Greek to India, were translated into Arabic. This was just for the purpose of international communication of knowledge. What has been said, it doesn't mean that you have to carry the same thing forward. No. You can choose it, you can reject it, but you have to be aware of the developmental stages. You have to be aware of the present sciences, all disciplines. So this was the time, this was the aptitude of that time. So that's why they were in a position to negotiate between the ancient approaches and the factors of the modernity. So keeping all these things in mind, so we say that the traditional Islam means it is not contradictory to the modern aptitudes or modern requirements or the modern world. I would say there is a contradiction between traditional Islam and modernism. When you add isms, it becomes a new philosophy. So I would say modernity is something different from modernism. When we come to the modernism, this term, modernism, leads to two things. Before coming to this aspect, this thing is important. In the last century, or maybe last 2 centuries, there were some movements in Islamic history, movements of reforms, reformist movements. And they adopted 2 different, or you can say opposite directions. One reformist movement, without mentioning the names, but they emerged in various parts of the world, Arab and non-Arab world. One part. One reformist movement started thinking in a way in this new present world, or the modern world, we need to go back to the pure Islam. To practice the pure Islam as it existed in the time of Holy Prophet and the time of companions. So they became Puritans. They have the same status as in the history, as the Protestants have in the history of Christianity. They became the Puritans. From Puritans, the new trend emerged, which finally concluded in the form of extremism. The Puritanism converted into extremism. So Puritanism and extremism they disconnected the real spirit of the message of Islam from the traditional Islam. Because by saying that we want to go to the pure origin of Islam, it means you want to deny the significance of 14 centuries of Islamic tradition. This is the Puritanism mean. You want to deny the whole historical tradition. You want to deny all the authorities of all the possessors of the knowledge. The Aimma of fiqh, the Aimma of tafsir, the Aimma of hadith, the Aimma of tasawwuf, the Aimma of marifa, the Aimma of history, the Aimma of philosophy. Those who have been carrying on and transforming the message of Islam from generations to generations, and those who formulated the basic principles of interpretation, and those who provided the discipline to interpretation of Islam, so that any new interpreter of Islam, any new explainer of Islam would be able to remain within specific outline which are based on the basic principles of Quran and Sunnah. So it means when you say Puritan Islam, it means you are denying the history of traditional Islam consisting of 14 centuries. And this is against the teachings of Holy Prophet himself. This thought led some people towards extremism. This was a very conservative view. And this is not traditional Islam. Rather, this is negation of traditional Islam. Other reformist movement came up and emerged in this time, and they thought the Islam has not become that much practical and workable as it used to be in the ancient times. So we should reform it to make it adaptable. They didn't want to adopt Islam. They want Islam to adapt. They didn't want to change themselves. They wanted Islam to be changed. So these reformists, they started the secularist movements. This was the origin of modernism, which they picked up from the Western world's necessity. There was a necessity, because the original words and letters of the prophets and messengers were not intact. The scriptures were changed. And the works which were done in Islamic history for the disciplines and sciences, these kinds of works were never done by the scholars of other people. There was a very big vacuum. And that vacuum was being filled by an arbitrary authority of a single person of a church. Arbitrary authority, because there was a vacuum. When we come to the case of Islam, there was never a vacuum. There was no arbitrary authority in order to fulfill any vacuum. So there was never a challenge between the modern and the ancient. Rather, there was continuity. So when this new reformist movement started with modernism, so modernism leads to two attitudes or two philosophies. One is modernism. One leads to secularism and one liberalism. One secularism and one liberalism. What is secularism? Which originates from modernism. This is reductionism. Secularism is nothing but reductionism. You may think, what is reductionism? So reductionism means to reduce the role of Islam just only up to the extent of single dimension out of the hundreds dimensions of Islam. To reduce Islam just up to the dimension of worship, very narrow dimension of religion, religious acts of observance. So this is reductionism, and taking out all of the spheres of life from individual level up to the global level out of the ambit of Islam. So this is reducing Islam to a very narrow scope. This was the second damage. And the second thing which emerged out of modernism was liberalism. And what is liberalism? To me, it is agnosticism. and skepticism. Liberalism means you are nowhere, neither here nor here. You are hanging between two ends. Whatever you hear between from CNN, from BBC, from Time, from Western news, from Western European culture, from the Western culture, from the Eastern culture, from this scholar, from this country, from that country, from the Indian movement, from the Arab movement, whatever you hear from various parts of the world, you are waving here, neither here nor there. You are always in the condition of doubt, skepticism and agnosticism. You know nothing. So there is total, your whole area of knowledge is full of probability. There is lack of definite knowledge. And definite knowledge just comes out of the revelation from the mouth of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the form of Quran and Sunnah. So that's why I mentioned that when the reformist movement of Puritans started, it ended to extremism. And the extremistic interpretation of Islam led some younger generations mistakenly towards radicalism and terrorism. And when the other reformist movement started, negation of the workability and practicability of Islam in the modern world, they led through modernism the people towards either to secularism or to absolute liberalism. So now it would be very easy to explain, to say that neither Puritanism is traditional Islam, nor extremism is traditional Islam. On this side, neither secularism is traditional Islam, and nor liberalism is traditional Islam. So now you can ask me, what the traditional Islam is? Traditional Islam is Quran, As-Sunnah, and then Al-Fiqh. When we talk of Al-Fiqh, then we go to the sources of the Islamic law. We will come there later. All original sources through which Islamic law has emerged, developed and expanded and transformed to generations. And Al-Fiqh and Al-Aqidah, the traditional theology, transformed to the nations, to generations from generations through the A'immah. And At-Tasawwuf, Al-Ihsan, Al-Zuhd, Al-Ma'rifah, Al-Suluk, Al-Tariqa according to Quran. لَوْ اسْتَقَامُوا عَلَى الطَّرِيقَةِ لَأَسْقَيْنَاهُمْ مَاءً غَدَقًا Surah Al-Jinn. If they had persisted to At-Tariqa, we would have provided them all of these blessings in the Jannah. And Holy Prophet said, Al-Ihsan. When Sayyidina Jibreel Amin asked Holy Prophet, this is the traditional Islam. Holy Prophet ﷺ was sitting in a company of his companions. When Sayyidina Jibreel came and asked, Ya Rasulullah, what is Iman? This hadith is related by Imam Bukhari and Muslim both. Muttafaq alayh. Holy Prophet ﷺ mentioned the basic articles of faith. This is Iman. So by mentioning basic articles of faith and saying this is Iman, so when these articles of faith, knowledge of these articles of faith developed, it became the science of theology. It became Al-Aqidah. And the scholars who became the specialists of this science of Iman, they became the A'immatul Aqidah. Whether he was Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, or he was Imam Abul Mansur al-Maturidi, whether he was Imam Tahawi, whether he was Imam Nasafi, whether he was Imam Ghazali, whether he was Ash'aira or Maturidiya, and then there were small schools separate. And again, whether they were the people not following any specific, for example, in fiqh we say. Then he asked the second question, what is Islam? Sayyidina Jibreel, Holy Prophet ﷺ answered, the five basic pillars of Islam, the practical pillars of Islam: Shahada, Salah, Zakah, Sawm and Zakah, Hajj. By mentioning five practical pillars of Islam and said this is Islam, the Holy Prophet ﷺ indicated towards the practical knowledge of the practical practices of Islam. this knowledge of the practices of Islam, when this knowledge developed and became a science, so this was known as al-fiqh. Al-fiqh deals with the knowledge of the practices of Islam. Al-aqidah deals with the knowledge of theology, we say the faiths of Islam, details of the faith of Islam. It became al-fiqh. So whether he was Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Malik or Shafi'i or Ahmad bin Hanbal and some other schools which could not continue, Imam Zahiri and all these, so they became the carrier and possessors of the defined term of Islam by Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this was a further development of the term Islam in its practical knowledge. Then Sayyidina Jibreel asked the third question, what is ihsan, Ya Rasulullah? What is ihsan? The excellence, the spiritual excellence. One ihsan is mean generosity, but here he meant by answer of Holy Prophet, spiritual excellence. Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, al-ihsanu an ta'budallaha ka'annaka tarahu, fa in lam takun tarahu fa innahu yarak. Then answering the question of ihsan, he neither mentioned the question of faith, nor did he mention the question of practice. He mentioned the spiritual feelings, the cordial and spiritual states. He said, an ta'budallah. Ihsan is then when you worship Almighty Allah, your spiritual state should be like this. Your spiritual and cordial and spiritual feelings should be like this, as if you are seeing at the divine beauty of Almighty God. You are absorbed in vision of His beauty. And if you can't achieve this state, then at least you should possess this state of stability and firmness, that He is watching you every time and you are in His presence. Either His vision or His presence. So the combination of these two spiritual states is ihsan. You know, there is no practice involved. This is the development of a spiritual state, development of a spiritual feeling. So when this development of spiritual state and fueling through the process of self-purification, when it developed and it became a discipline, became a knowledge, became a science. So this specific thing of prophetic ihsan was known as at-tasawwuf, az-zuhud, as-suluk, at-tasawwuf, at-tariqa, al-ma'rifah. In the same way as al-aqidah, as al-fiqh, as at-tasawwuf. So all these three channels which gave further rise to philosophy and thoughts as a full-fledged structure of Islam and a full-fledged body of teachings of Islam, the full-fledged formulation became the traditional Islam. So when this traditional Islam was carried on by generation to generation, so when I say traditional Islam, or when we should conceive it, we should not conceive in a way that only the text of Quran and the text of Sunnah is the traditional Islam. No. Quran and Sunnah are the basis of textual knowledge of traditional Islam, scriptural knowledge of traditional Islam, and then there is a rational knowledge within traditional Islam, intellectual knowledge within traditional Islam. So this is combination of the two. And then the third is the spiritual knowledge, Gnosticism, within the traditional Islam. So the founder of this traditional Islam, so why we say that traditional Islam is significant, is important, is very, very relevant and indispensable for our lives in the modern world. Why do we say? The reason is that the founder of traditional Islam is Prophet Muhammad himself. The teachings of this traditional Islam has been given by the Holy Quran itself. When we talk of the significance of traditional Islam in the present, contemporary or modern world, we mean we are talking of the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, which include the continuity. So the basis, Quranic basis of the significance of traditional Islam in the ancient world as well as in the modern world, present day. The first basis is Quranic verse, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 59, Almighty Allah states, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ati'ullaha wa ati'ur rasul. These two are Quran and Sunnah. Obey God and obey the messenger. So obedience to God, obedience to the messenger means the text of Quran and the text of Sunnah. And the authority of Quran and authority of Sunnah. Then Quran says, wa ulil amri minkum, and those who are men in authority. So this express text of the verse of Holy Quran elucidates and elaborates a specific reality, and that is that the authority is not only Quran and Sunnah. There is a third authority too. This is how we say that traditional Islam starts from Quran and Sunnah and includes other sources too. It is very unfortunate those people who have half-baked knowledge and claim to be the scholars and jurists and authorities, and they are specialists of none, jacks of all. They try to negate the authority of traditional continuity of Islamic teachings, and they want to concentrate only on the text of Quran and Sunnah. This thing is against the text of Quran and Sunnah. Now, Quranic text says there are three authorities. Atiyullah wa Atiyur Rasul. First two authorities are absolute. First two authorities are unqualified, unchallengeable, no contingent. This is not a contingent, not a conditional, not temporary one. This is persistent, everlasting, forever. Quran and Sunnah, absolute authorities. But after these two authorities, which are absolute in its nature, that's why the word Atiyu, this command, has been repeated for Holy Prophet. Unfortunately, there are a handful of people now claim to be scholars who say we just want to concentrate on Quran and not on the Sunnah. They are not ready to consider the Sunnah as authority. If the Sunnah, if this is the reformist view of Islam of today, if the Sunnah of Holy Prophet and the words of Holy Prophet and the declarations of Holy Prophets and demonstrations of Holy Prophet and the conduct and behavior of Holy Prophet and the communications of Holy Prophet, if that is not the authority, then there is no realistic evidence of Quran being a divine revelation of Almighty God. When Holy Prophet came from cave of Hira and he said, Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq, Iqra wa rabbukal akram allazi allama bil qalam, allama al insana ma lam ya'lam. When he recited these verses, the companions definitely would have asked, Ya Rasulullah, what is this? What are these words? What are you reciting? A new paragraph, a new thing which we have never heard. They asked him. Holy Prophet said, this is Quran which has been revealed to me. Did he answer it or not? He said, this is Quran. Now, my dear sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, I'm putting a very delicate question here. Question is that he recited the 5 verses, these verses were Quran. But answering the question of the companions when he answered, what is this, they asked, and he said, this is Quran. This particular sentence of Holy Prophet, that this is Quran, is this the text of Quran or are these the words of Holy Prophet? My simple question. Are this sentence, this is Quran which I am reciting, has been revealed on me by Almighty Allah in the cave of Hira. Whatever he had explained in his words, are these words the words of Quran or the words of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Tell me. This sentence is not the part of Quran. These were Holy Prophet's words. So who led us towards the acceptance and towards the reliability of the authoritativeness of Quran? Words of Holy Prophet. When he said to the companions, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman and Ali and everybody, whatever I have recited, this is the Quran which has been revealed on me. So they brought their faith in Quran. So their faith was established in Quran through the words of Prophet Muhammad, which was the Sunnah, which was Hadith. So hadith led the ummah and the companions toward the acceptance of authority of the Quran. If there was no belief in authority of hadith, there is no single evidence of the authoritativeness of Quran. None of us have ever seen Jibreel coming down. We have never heard Almighty Allah's voice, His speech. No evidence except the evidence of Prophet Muhammad. No evidence except the evidence of Prophet Muhammad. Kaaba already existed there. But what is the actual evidence that this was the actual Kaaba constructed by Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Adam, where we are required to Walillahi ala nas hijjul bayt. There are the words of Kaaba and Bayt. But what is the evidence that this is the actual Kaaba? Evidence is only Prophet Muhammad. Because he committed tawaf around it, this became Kaaba. So every single word uttered by Holy Prophet and every single act of his practice led us towards the establishment of Iman. If you remove the authority of Sunnah from Islam, then nothing remains acceptable for the Muslim. And there is no evidence of even single existence of Almighty God. Because when he was giving the first message of Tawheed to the people of Mecca, it is in Sahih Bukhari, standing on the mountain of Safa, he asked them, if I say to you that there is a group of individuals, a military men or attackers coming and they will soon attack on you. He put a question to the non-believers. Would you accept my proposition? Would you rely on me? They said, yes. He said, why? You haven't seen the people who are going to attack on you. Why would you rely on me? They said, because you are as-sadiq al-amin. You are the truthful. You have never ever spoken except the truth. So we believe in your truthfulness, so we will accept and rely on you. When this was established, his truthfulness was established. Only then he says, if you accept my truthfulness, then I inform you there is only one God. Accept the unity and oneness of Almighty Allah. So those who accepted on his invitation became Abu Bakr and Umar and Usman and Ali. And those who denied it, they remain Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. So the whole differentiation between Iman and Kufr was originally based on the statement truthfulness and the reliability of the statement of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why Atiullah wa Atiur Rasul are the two authorities. And then is the third authority, Ulil Amri Minkum. Quran says, and then in the men in authority. The word of Quran, Ulil Amr, men in authority, means that there is a third authority after Quran and Sunnah. How can the people deny the relevance of that authority? And they say, we want to go to the Puritan Islam, the origin, negating and denying all 1400-year history of Islam. This is denial of Quran. Now, Ulil Amr, the men in authority. The question is, what does it mean, the men in authority? Abdullah ibn Abbas explains the meanings, the men in authority. Jabir bin Abdullah, I'm quoting the names. Imam Hassan al-Basri, Imam Abu al-Aliyah at-Tabi'i, Ata bin Abi Rabah at-Tabi'i, first two companions. Ad-Dahhak, Mujahid bin Jabr, all these companions and their followers, Sahaba and Tabi'in, they declare that the meanings of Ulul Amr humul ulama. The Aimmatul Ilm, the scholars and authorities, the Aimma. When they say ulama, doesn't mean the imams of all mosques. Means authorities, the Aimma of Ilm. And every speaker giving a speech, every speaker known to be an orator and speaker, no. Ulul Ilm, those who are real possessors of knowledge. Warasatul Anbiya, those who are real successors of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all these companions and successors say ulil amri minkum means ulama, the authorities, warasatul anbiya. And there is second interpretation, that is the heads of the state, umara. Again second interpretation, but we are concentrating on the first meaning. Now this first meaning, I would like, although they have explained it, and Allama Ibn al-Qayyim has mentioned the meaning of this verse. This is I'lamul Muwaqqi'een by Allama Ibn al-Qayyim in front of me. He mentions the explanation, interpretation of the companions. But I would like to derive this meaning of Quranic text from Quran. The same meaning is elaborated in Quran of Ulil Amr. It comes in Holy Quran. لَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَىٰ أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Quran says if they had referred this sort of news, or they have referred this matter towards the messenger and towards the Ulil Amr, then it is in Quran, لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Then those scholars and jurists and the ulama who are competent and who are quite able and competent to derive and infer the meanings from the text, they would have reached the right conclusion. So here the word Ulil Amr has been connected with La'alima. They would have inferred the right meanings from the text with ilm. So Quran says Ulil Amr is the ulama, the warasatul anbiya, the authorities. Then the third verse of Quran, which establishes the significance of traditional Islam, is the Quranic verse again. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Quran would have said here, if you don't know anything, you should refer your case towards Quran and Sunnah. No. Although in case of dispute, it is stated, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. If there is any dispute between you, then for final adjudication, you have to refer your matter towards Allah and Prophet, means for Quran and the Sunnah. But here, at the first stage, it is stated, if you don't know the reality of a particular thing, you are ignorant of a specific issue in Islam, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ. You should refer your case towards Ahlul Zikr. And Ahlul Zikr are not only Ahlul Ilm. They are those Ahlul Ilm, they have the knowledge as well as the piety and sainthood. Piety, spiritual people. Ashabul Taqwa. Those people who have the nur, the light of Taqwa in their heart. أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Those people whose heart and breast have been opened by Almighty Allah for the sake of Quran, and Almighty Allah has sent His nur in their heart. Their hearts are illuminating and they are looking with the nur of Almighty Allah. This is the Quran. So these kind of people are known as Ahlul Zikr. Not only the scholars of the external disciplines and sciences, no, but the scholars who combine the both. The knowledge of the traditional sciences, the scriptural and rational sciences, as well as they possess the nur in their the spirituality, the piety. Their heart possess the renunciation, the love of God, the nearness and proximity of God. And they stand up in the darkness of night and they cry in front of Almighty Allah. And they are very close to His proximity. And they are His friends. Ala inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. They combine both the external disciplines of knowledge and internal renunciation and light of the proximity of Almighty Allah. Then the third, Quran says, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Every single person ask Almighty Allah for guidance. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Show us the straight path. Now this is the first stance, first place in the Holy Quran where Almighty Allah has described what is the straight path. He would have answered, As-sirat al-mustaqim huwa siratul Quran, siratullah, siratul Rasul, Siratul Kitab, Siratul Sunnah, denying everything else. It would have been stated like that, but no. Quran has given a very comprehensive answer. This answer is based on the totality of knowledge. Almighty Allah didn't confine the straight path and the path of guidance to just Quran and Sunnah, the text. No. He expanded it and said, Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim. The straight path is the path of those who are the blessed people, who have been blessed by Almighty Allah, who possess these special favors. Now, an'amta alayhim, those who are the blessed people. Again a question can arise, who are the blessed people in the light of Quran? There are four people, four categories. Again in Surah An-Nisa. Anamallahu alayhim minan nabiyyina was-siddiqina was-shuhada'i was-salihin. The first category of the blessed people are Anbiya, the prophets and messengers. Then Siddiqeen, the awliya. Then Shuhada, the great scholars and authorities who bear witness through their knowledge and through their taqwa. And the fourth, as-salihin, the pious and salihin people. These four categories, first the prophets and messengers, and the three categories afterwards from the ummah. So now how traditional Islam can be confined only to the Quran and Sunnah, when Quran has not confined it? So it would be against the message of Quran. And the last thing, that's why this was the Quran and Sunnah, and the path of Salihin and path of Awliya and path of Aimma Muhtadeen. So this was saved by Almighty Allah. A guaranteed protection was provided to it. And Quran says regarding this traditional Islam's protection, that's why this is relevant and significant in the present day world and in every coming modern world, because it has been protected. It is not distorted. Almighty Allah says, Inna nahnu nazzalna zikra wa inna lahu lahafizun. We have revealed this zikr unto you. And a-zikr means overall revealed knowledge. This revealed knowledge in the form of Quran, in the form of Sunnah, and in the form of Deen of Islam. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam deena. This whole Deen, whole sum and totality of Deen, of Sharia and Deen, this is the a-zikr. And Allah says, I am the protector of this Deen till the day of judgment. Since Almighty Allah Himself is the protector of the Deen till the day of judgment. Now, I'm going to close my talk, and the fact is, I had made preparation of about 15 points, and the only first point was, what is traditional Islam? But everywhere I have connected it with the significance and relevance of the modern world. So I have up till now covered my first point. And I hope, inshallah, this would be sufficient and quite useful, beneficial for you. Just I wanted to add ahadith, just then I will finish. I will leave all jurisprudential arguments, logical arguments, theological arguments, philosophical arguments, and all other things which I wanted to explain regarding the sources of Islamic law and ijtihad and many other jurisprudential and classical things, to explain how this traditional Islam is workable and beneficial and useful and practicable in this modern world, to explain and about the scope of it. But I will leave just to add, with addition of certain ahadith, to whatever I have quoted from Quran regarding the significance of the traditional Islam in ancient as well as in this modern world. Holy Prophet ﷺ appointed Muaz ibn Jabal. This hadith is narrated by Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi. If you want to read again, I am quoting from my own book of hadith, Rawdatus Salikin fi Manaqib al-Awliya wa Salihin. This is book compilation on hadith, and I am quoting it from chapter 8 of this book. So there are, I have elaborated many ahadith on this particular subject in this way. He appointed Muaz ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu as the Chief Justice of Yemen. And he asked, now the definition of traditional Islam and significance and necessity and indispensability of this traditional Islam, which I have explained, has been elaborated and explained by Holy Prophet himself. He himself is the founder of this idea. And he always used to teach his companions wherever he sent them. After the Quran, now this is the Hadith Sahih, reported by Abu Dawood and Tirmizi and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and Musnad ibn Abi Shayba and many other books of Hadith. He asked Muaz ibn Jabal, he was training him. Holy Prophet's company and his sitting was a training academy too for his companion and students. So he asked, O Muaz, how would you adjudicate the matter? How will you pass the judgments if any issue, a new issue comes to you? So he was talking of modernity. If any new issue appears and emerges, comes in front of you, how would you address it? You see, he was addressing the question of modernity. Muaz ibn Jabal stated, Aqdi bi kitabillah. I will read the book of God, Almighty Allah, Quran, and I will infer from Quran and I will decide according to Quran. Then Holy Prophet said, he created the room for modernity. He said, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ فِي. If you don't find answer in Quran. He didn't say that if there is no answer in Quran, he didn't say like that. He said, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ. There is of course answer of every question is in Quran, but if you don't find, depends upon your capacity of inference, your ability of deriving the thing. If you don't find it, then he said, بِسُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Yeah, then I will look into the Sunnah of Holy Prophet, the Hadith, and I will infer the guidance from it, and I will decide according to the Sunnah. Then again Holy Prophet said, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ فِيهِمَا. Of course, the answer to every question of modernity, every newly emerging issue, every new question has an answer in the Quran and the Sunnah of Holy Prophet. But if you don't find, you are unable to find in both of these sources from Quran and Sunnah, then what will you do? Third question. If you have heard this hadith already in connection of Islamic jurisprudence, I am sure most of you have heard a different text. I am quoting a different text today. Beautiful text, comprehensive of all traditional Islam, totality. Holy Prophet said, if you don't find in both of them, then what will you do? He said, then I will decide according to the judgments of the pious people. Aqdi bima qada fiha salihun. This is the main theme. Muaz ibn Jabal says, he himself is a companion. It means he himself understood that some of them were more pious than others. And the guided caliphs, of course, were the pious, most pious one. He said, I will decide then the matter in the light of the judgments passed by the pious people, as-salihun. Then Holy Prophet asked fourth question. فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And if you don't find from the judgments of the pious people, then he said, then I will do my ijtihad. I will utilize my reasoning in the light of Quran, Sunnah and Salihin, the pious saintly people. Then Holy Prophet appreciated him that you have taken a right path. And Almighty Allah has blessed you with the right and correct tawfiq. This is the hadith which provides the basis of authoritativeness and significance of traditional Islam in every time. And second hadith, Abdul Rahman bin Yazid reports, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he relates, famous companion Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Hadith comes in Sunan an-Nasai and Sunan ad-Darmi. Again hadith is sahih. He said, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud used to say his students and his followers and successors, tabi'een, he used to say, and he said, إِنَّهُ قَدْ أَتَى عَلَيْنَا زَمَانٌ وَلَسْنَا نَقْدِي وَلَسْنَا هُنَالِكَ O my students, O our successors, there was a time when we didn't use to pass the judgments, juridical judgments, jurisprudential judgments, juristic judgments or decisions. And we were not able at that time to do this. It means that he is mentioning that there was a time that our knowledge was not that perfect, or our knowledge, juristic knowledge, had not reached that position which by the grace of Almighty Allah it has reached now. So it means because of that lack of perfection, we never used to pass the judgments. This was the practice of companions. But what is our practice? No need of any perfection. No need of completion of the classical studies of Islamic sciences. No need of speciality. No need of going into the commentaries of Quran and the commentaries of Hadith. And no need into going thousands of the books or jurisprudence of Islam written by the authorities. Just without going into these specialities of disciplines. Everybody who can speak, who is a good orator, he is the authority. He is a scholar. He is a jurist. He gives his opinion on Islam. And this is how the younger generation is being misled and misguided. Because now we are going against the path of the companions of Holy Prophet and the teachings of Holy Prophet ﷺ. He said, when we had not achieved this status of knowledge and competency, we never used to pass the judgments and decisions. Now we do. Then he said, O my students, now فَمَنْ أَرَدَ لَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ قَضَاءٌ بَعْدَ الْيَوْمِ. Now we are your teachers and I teach you. If any issue comes before you in the modern times, you have to confront any act or any issue of modernity and you have to address it. What you have to do? He said, فَلْيَقْدِ بِمَا فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. This is the traditional Islam. First of all, see into the book of God and try to infer the guidance from the text of Quran. Number two, فَإِنْ جَاءَ أَمْرٌ لَيْسَ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ فَلْيَقْدِ بِمَا قَضَى بِهِ نَبِيُّهُ. If you don't find the answer from Quran, then don't apply your own opinion. No, then decide and stick to the judgment given by Prophet Muhammad and his Sunnah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you don't find in both of these two sources, then Abdullah ibn Masud used to say, فَلْيَقْدِ بِمَا قَضَى بِهِ الصَّالِحُونَ. Then try to find the judgments and the views and interpretations of Islam given by awliya and salihin. Aimmatul Huda, the authorities, the pious scholars, as-salihun, the pious saintly scholars, the scholars ahlul ilmi wa taqwa. Not those kind, don't go behind those kind of scholars. Allah knows better whether they are praying 5 times a day regularly or not, but they do a speech. Whether they are sahibut taqwa or not. Whether they are really God-fearing or not. Whether they are doing something for money, for world, for lust, for greed, for status, for worldly benefits, or just for the pleasure of Almighty Allah and the smile and prayer of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Do they fear from somebody else, or do they just fear from Almighty Allah and none else? These are qadab as-salihun, the pious competent scholars. They are the successors of traditional Islam. Then he said, فَإِنْ جَاءَ أَمْرٌ لَيْسَ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. If you don't find anything from Quran, you don't find the answer from Sunnah, وَلَا قَضَى بِالصَّالِحُونَ, or you don't find the answer from the pious Islamic authorities. So these words of the Hadith and the words of the companions have covered the whole 1400 years continuity of Islamic traditions of knowledge, as-salihun of every time. Sirat al-lazina anamta alayhim are the as-salihun. If you don't find in these 3 sources, then fal yajtahid bi ra'yih. Then comes the level of ijtihad with your juristic opinion. And again, when you say fal yajtahid bi ra'yih, it is not a just opinion. It is juristic opinion, and a juristic jurisprudential opinion. You should know what is the asl. You should know what is the fara. You should know what is the illah. You should know what is the hukm. You should know all circumstances of that time when this order was passed by Holy Prophet. You should analyze the situation of the modern time in which you are going to apply it. You should know the commonality, juristic commonality between the original text and between the new application. And you should know all of ahadith. Imam Muhammad bin Hanbal was asked, who is mujtahid mufti? Who can pass the judgment and transform the correct knowledge to the ummah? A person who remembers and who has learnt 100,000 hadiths by heart? Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal said no. Even he has learnt 100,000 hadiths by heart. Then he said 200,000 hadiths? He said no. Even then he is not competent to give ijtihad, his juristic opinion. Then he said 300 hadiths? 300,000? He said no. Then he said he should go through into the 400,000 hadiths? Then Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal said yes. Only a person who can pass a juristic judgment and opinion. He should be such competent and capable on Islamic disciplines, on traditions of Holy Prophet, on ahadith, that at least his eyes should be on 400,000 ahadith of Holy Prophet. And then he should know the nasikh, what is abrogating. He should know what is mansukh. From Quran and Sunnah, what has been abrogated. He should know the aam, what is general and what is specific. He should know what is absolute and what is qualified. There are thousands of situations, the disciplines of hadith, what is sahih and what is hasan and what is daif and what is mutawatir and what is mashhur, what is aziz, what is gharib, what is modal, what is mawdu, what is matruk, what is different between the two. He should have his eye of ability and competency on every discipline in depth, along with this much substance of knowledge. He said only then he is allowed to pass a juristic judgment. Now a time has come. Everybody is a jurist now. Everybody is scholar and imam. And if there are no problems for him, everybody would like, the very good orator would like to create a mazhab, a new mazhab of his own. He is a scholar. Everybody is a scholar. So this kind of half-baked scholarship has no place in traditional Islam. Traditional Islam is a correct track because it has been in the hands of the competent, pious scholars every time. Same was reported by Hazrat Ali. He also said that if there is any issue in front of you, a new issue, which you can't find from Quran and Sunnah, to Shabirun al-Fuqaha wal-Abidin. I am emphasizing the word the pious people and ulama together. Then you should consult the Fuqaha, the great jurists, those great jurists who are Abidin, who are pious people, men of spirituality. Same is reported by Abdullah ibn Abbas, hadith sahih. And same, Sayyidina Umar, he wrote a letter to Qazi Shureh and Abu Musa Ash'ari. Sayyidina Umar wrote a letter. And Sayyidina Umar, he gave this instruction, Sayyidina Umar in his period of caliphate. If any newly emergent situation comes in front of you and you have to address it, this was the written letter instruction given by Sayyidina Umar. And Imam Nasai has quoted in his book Sunan al-Nasai. Sayyidina Umar said, if you have to decide and address any newly emerging situation, you have to tackle it, address it and decide it in the light of Quran. If you don't find anything from it, then in the light of Sunnah. If you don't find it, then Sayyidina Umar wrote a letter, then in the light of the judgment passed by the pious scholars, not by just scholars, pious spiritual scholars. And if you don't find in their judgments, then ijtihad. And this aspect of ijtihad covers every question of modernity till the day of judgment. Since Islam, the traditional Islam, includes all aspects of scriptural as well as rational, includes all aspects of transmissional as well as intellectual disciplines and knowledges, and every single thing right from Quran and Sunnah has been addressed in the form of Quran, in the form of Sunnah, in the form of ijtihad, in the form of ijma, in the form of qiyas, in the form of istihsan, juristic preference, in the form of masale mursala, public good, in the form of concordance, istishab, in the form of al-urf wal-ada, customs and usages, in the form of ad-darura, the necessity of the time, and in the form of raf'ud darar, removal of difficulties and problems. There are 24 sources through which the Islamic laws emerge, and they are developed, and they address the new emerging situations of the modern times. So Islam and traditional Islam is never old. Times keep on becoming modern and ancient, but Islam is never an ancient religion. It always remains modern. So I finish my words on these 2 points, and I give the remaining time for you for any kind of question and answer. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah. My question is that nowadays there are certain orators who attach fundamentalism with Islam, with traditional Islam.
Unfortunately, this fundamentalism is a new term which was emerged in Europe, and it was never emerged in Islamic history. Its origin is Western. In the early times of the 20th century, when there was a fight going on between, as I mentioned in the beginning, as the Catholic Church authority and the secularity. At that time, in the Western world, those people who were sticking to their own religious or spiritual Christian values, moral values, they were given the title of fundamentalists. For Christians, the title was given for the Western people, and it was given by the Western people, and Islam was never the subject of fundamentalism. Nowadays, this concept or term has been applied on the Muslims. Whether you like it or not, whether this was a wrong application or right application, but it has become a universal or global phenomena. Now those people who have narrow vision of Islam, or as I said, Puritan concept or extremistic concept, they, as far as the theology or juristic explanations are concerned, they are giving the term fundamentalist Islam. So if this is the case, as it is being perceived, right or wrong, but it has become, it is known as umumul balwa. A wrong thing has prevailed now, right or wrong. So in this sense, otherwise there are secular fundamentalists, there are Hindu fundamentalists, there are Christian fundamentalists, there are European Jewish fundamentalists, there are Muslim fundamentalists. In this particular meaning, I have already explained, traditionalist is a fine word. But whenever the word fundamentalist is used in this particular narrow sense in which it is being perceived now, Islamic teachings are not fundamentalist. Islamic teachings are much more moderate, peaceful, global, workable, humanistic, and acceptable to all mankind.